Hi everyone, my name is Melody and I'm a PhD student. And when I started my PhD, I was looking for a device that would enable me to write all of my notes on journal articles and books I'm reading, but then easily insert that information back into a literature review or whatever else I might be writing at the time. And so I've started a bit of a crusade to find the optimal system for doing this. If you haven't already seen it, I did do a review of the Remarkable 2, which you can find up there. Have a look at that. And now today I'm going to be reviewing the iPad and specifically the Nebo app, which overall I love, but also has a lot of kinks that probably need to get ironed out. So let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about in my review is the actual process of writing on the iPad Air. Now, the first thing I noticed when I started writing was the difference in the center of gravity of the Apple Pencil compared to the pens that I usually use in my notebook. Now, what I mean by that is if I take this pen that I think I got for free somewhere, and I hold that and balance it, what you'll see is when I actually grasp the pen to then write, the position of the pen is very close to its balance point. When I do the same with the Apple Pencil, you can see that actually I can't balance it in the same way, and it is heavy on the opposite end to the writing end. Now, what that means is that it's just a bit harder to hold than a regular pen. But this might not be an issue for some people because I know some people like heavy pens. I don't like heavy pens. I like very light pens. So that was a bit of a problem, but I've gotten quite used to it. I think this will depend on which Apple Pencil you choose to buy, but I bought the Apple Pencil 2 so that it could charge beside my iPad. But this Apple Pencil has a double tap gesture, which enables it to change between writing and eraser. I actually found that supremely irritating because often when I was writing, I would accidentally tap it or it would detect a tap that I didn't think I did. And while I'm writing, it turns into an eraser. The benefit is that you can actually just turn off that functionality, so it's not really a huge problem in the end. One of the things I think people will find most detrimental about writing on the iPad is actually just that I think it's significantly slower than it is to write in a paper-based notebook. And the thing I put that down to is actually that the heaviness is in this end of the pencil, and so that just makes it harder to hold and therefore harder to write. I know one of the things people are most concerned about writing on the iPad is the lack of a paper-like feel. Now, compared to the Remarkable, and I've done a review of that here, there's really no comparison. The Remarkable wins hands down. The thing that I would say though is I haven't actually found that to be much of an issue. I'm actually quite enjoying writing on glass, so I think it's just really down to personal preference and how important that is to you. There are also devices that can make writing on an iPad feel better, but it's really up to you and personal preferences. Moving on from the iPad writing experience, I want to specifically talk about the writing experience of the Nebo app. Now, right from the get-go, Nebo offers you 6 different options for the way you hold your pencil. Now, the reason this is so important is because it stops you from accidentally selecting things that you don't want to select, which happens on the Remarkable 2. The other thing that I think is just really, really special about Nebo is they've created all of these writing gestures that you can use to easily format your text. So for example, you can use the pen to create new lines, subtract new lines, you can scribble out sentences that you don't want, you can turn one word into 2 words or 2 words into 1 word. And it's just very, very intuitive. Now, this functionality is so good that Apple itself have now copied Nebo with these gestures. So Apple Scribble is based on Nebo's functionality, which I just think shows how thoughtful the company itself is. One of the other things that I think is really, really cool about Nebo is that you can change the orientation of your iPad, and Nebo allows the words to move in such a way that make it look like a normal page of text. So for example, I usually write in landscape, but sometimes I want to view all of this in portrait. So when I move it to portrait, Nebo actually moves the words so it looks like a page that was written in portrait, which I just think is a really, really cool thing to do. The Nebo app, however, is not perfect and there are a lot of problems that need to be fixed. One of the biggest problems I've found is that it can't understand when I'm writing an X in the middle of a word. The way I was taught to write in cursive is that I partially write an X and then I will go back and write a line through the X as I'm crossing my T's and dotting my I's. Now what Nebo thinks is that I am crossing out a letter, and so I can never actually write an X with cursive script in Nebo properly. The other thing I'd really like to see Nebo do is to add a gesture for adding spaces between paragraphs and adding indentations. Currently, this takes a lot of clicks, and I think it could be very easily achieved with a pinch and zoom function. Another thing they could do, which I know a lot of other note-taking apps have done recently, is to add the ability to see two notebooks at the same time. I think this just would really increase the functionality. Now, the thing that I absolutely love about Nebo is the handwriting to text app. It is the best handwriting to text functionality I've seen in everything I've tried. It really recognizes pretty much any word as long as it's in a dictionary, and even some words that I'm very surprised it could recognize, like electroencephalograph, metagenomics, and transcriptomics. Now, if there's a word that is very important to you that it doesn't recognize, it has a dictionary where you can add this word, and then it will be much, much better at recognizing that word in future, which I just think is a really, really great idea. There are, however, many things that Nebo doesn't recognize very well. So some of these things are acronyms and where you're combining letters and numbers. For example, I'm studying immunology, and so I use shortenings of larger names, like interleukin 6 becomes IL6, and it's not very good at recognizing those kinds of things. It's also very bad at detecting my capital D. I'm not sure why. And it doesn't understand common shorthands. For example, I use the plus symbol instead of and. I also use 3 dots instead of therefore. I use W/O for without, and up and down symbols to represent increasing and decreasing. I think it would be really cool if Nebo allowed some way for you to input your shorthands and then for it to actually translate that into the words that you would like those symbols to represent. I think that would be really nifty, and I don't think it would take that much effort to make that functionality. The app also doesn't allow symbols from other languages in notebooks of specific languages. So for example, most of my notebooks are in UK English, and so that means that I can't write alpha and beta symbols. The reason why that is really important is because when I'm studying biochemistry, there are a lot of chemicals that are referred to by alpha and beta, which is really irritating to write out in full. One of the things that I thought would be really irritating about Nebo, but has not turned out to be too much of a problem, is the ticker on top of where you're writing. Now, this ticker shows you what your handwritten text is going to be converted into when you convert it into text. And I thought it would be irritating because it would be distracting from my writing, but they've actually done a pretty good job, and I don't find it distracting at all. One of the things that can be frustrating about it, though, is that it does take up a line of text. So if I want to go back and write on that line, I have to first move the ticker by writing somewhere else on the page and then go back to that line of text. And that's a bit frustrating. One of the other things I'd really like to see the ticker do is enable me to give it feedback on what I intended to write rather than what it thinks I wanted to write. So if the ticker has misunderstood a word that you've written, you can click on it and select from different options regarding what you actually wanted to write. The only problem is often what I wanted to write is not in that list. And so I'd really like to be able to give the app feedback on what I intended to write rather than what it thinks I wanted to write. One of the things that's really beautiful about the Nebo app is that it treats your handwriting as if it is keyboard-generated text. And what that means is that you can search the whole Nebo app or the document that you're currently on for words that you have written. So for example, if I search for the word handwriting on the document I'm currently writing, it will show me every instance of the word handwriting, whether it was a computer-generated text or my own handwriting. The next thing I want to talk about are the different ways that you can write in the Nebo app. So the app isn't just for note-taking, you can also do sketching, diagrams, freeform, and math. When writing in a hurry in the Nebo app, I actually find it quite difficult to insert these different types of writing style. Nebo doesn't predict that you might want any of these, so you have to manually insert a box when you want to draw a diagram or a sketch or freeform or do anything other than note-taking. When you're drawing a sketch, it's literally like having a blank piece of paper. You can't use gestures, you can only write, and you can write with different colors, and that's pretty much all there is to it. The diagram functionality enables you to draw a diagram and then be able to convert that into a computer-generated diagram. It also has the ticker running, so if you're writing any words, it will try and convert them into text. Another option is freeform, which is exactly what it says on the tin. You can just write whatever you want. The only difference between this one and sketching, as far as I can see, is that you can use gestures and it has a grid-like background. I can't see any other difference between the two. There's another option for specifically writing maths. I haven't used this very much. I have tried to use it, but I don't find it very intuitive, so I stopped using it. And I don't really use calculations on my notes, so it doesn't really matter very much to me. One of the things I'd really like to see in the Nebo app is a different way to format images and diagrams in relation to the text. The current situation is that Nebo views everything as a box. So a paragraph of text is a box and the diagram or image is a box. And you can move these boxes around relative to each other. What I'd really like to see though is being able to move a diagram or image in a similar way to the way that square formatting exists in Microsoft Word, so that the text can surround an image, because I think this would just make my notes a lot neater. The next thing I want to talk about is computer integration. Now, this is really where I think Nebo lets itself down. The way that it works is that you can download the app on any devices that you use. So I have Nebo on my laptop, my iPad, and also a desktop computer that I use for my PhD. And the idea is that I can handwrite my notes on my iPad, and then I'll be able to view them on whichever computer I'm using at the time, and then I'll be able to export them on that computer and text edit them as I need. One of the good things about Nebo is I can view my handwritten documents on my computer and then either export them as a PDF retaining my handwriting, or I can export them as a Word document, which turns them into computer-generated text, which I can then edit on my computer. They also have the ability to export multiple pages at the same time or complete notebooks, which I really like because it means that all of the notes for my literature review can just be easily exported into a single document on my computer. Something I'd really like to see on the Nebo app though is the ability to export all documents onto either a Word document or a PDF. Now, my reasoning for this is that I have a fear that Nebo is going to be bought by Apple or Microsoft, and then all of a sudden, my notes are going to become completely unavailable. To get around this, every week I have been exporting any new documents I make onto my computer to ensure that I have a backup in case something happens to the Nebo company. So I actually think in order for people to commit to Nebo and to try it out, I think they need to enable people to easily export their whole document library so that we can create a backup that is not reliant on the Nebo app to access. Now moving on to the thing I like least about Nebo, the sync function is terrible. The way it works is that you produce your notes on whatever device you're using, and then Nebo will upload those notes to a file on a third-party cloud software of your choice. Once you've manually synced, you can then select one of your other devices and click sync. And what should happen is that all of the documents that you had just uploaded should then automatically be downloaded to your other device. I'm not sure where this goes wrong, but most of the time when I try to do that action where I upload from my iPad and then download to my computer, this syncing doesn't work properly because it doesn't seem to detect all of the documents I made changes to. The problem with the manual sync is that I can write notes on my iPad and forget to upload them to the cloud and then make changes on my laptop. And then there's a discrepancy between these two different versions. And instead of allowing you to reconcile the difference between these versions, Nebo forces you to choose which version you want to keep, which means you're definitely going to lose some of your work. Another problem is sometimes my laptop doesn't recognize that changes have been made on the cloud. And so I start editing my laptop version, upload that to the cloud, and then it overrides changes that were made on my iPad that were uploaded to the cloud. And I have lost some really important documents because of this error. One of the cool things about the Nebo app is that it treats handwriting as if it's typed text. So I actually have documents where I've started writing them on my iPad, have uploaded them and then downloaded them onto a computer where I have then continued the document using typing. And I think that's really, really cool. One of the detriments I'm finding with needing to create a system for both writing and typing is that it seems like some functionality is best on one option rather than the other option. So, for example, I find indenting text is so much easier while typing. I don't even know how to do that while writing, but also scrolling for some reason won't work with a mouse wheel on the computer, whereas on the iPad you just flick your finger up and down. So it seems like they just haven't thought of the whole package for either writing or typing, but they are updating a lot, so I'd be interested to see if these little problems are ironed out with a couple of updates. In conclusion, I absolutely love the Nebo app. It still has a lot of problems, particularly in a subject area like mine where I write a lot of superscript, subscript, acronyms, and Greek letters. And the handwriting to text feature just isn't really at a level where I can reliably use it for the purpose that I intended it for. However, if you're in a different subject area, this actually might not be such a problem for you. Having been a linguist and a speech pathologist, I understand how difficult it is for humans and therefore computers to understand handwritten text. And so I just really want to give a shout out to Nebo and the MyScript company just for how far they've come with this technology, because this is hands down the best handwriting to text capability that I've seen in any app and any device. Ultimately, when you're selecting a device or app for writing digitally, you just really need to ask yourself, what do you need in your writing device or app? If you just want something that's going to replace your paper-based notebook, then the Remarkable 2 or a competitor like Onyx might be really good for you. If you want beautiful note pages with lots of pictures and lots of colors, then GoodNotes or Notability are going to be right for you. If you want professional note-taking, the best handwriting to text capability available, and those types of writing gestures, then Nebo is going to be absolutely the best app for you. And so it's really down to personal preference and what you need in your writing app. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope this was helpful for you. If you bought any of these devices or you've tried any of these apps, stick them in the comments, because I think that's just really helpful for other people making these similar choices. And we'll see you in the next video.